I have mixed feelings about her too.
I'm
Definitely
watching
has
it right
that.
now.
And are you? I have to. Yeah, I need to
I
watch
love
it.
that show though.
I love that show.
Hi, my subscribers and people viewing my channel. I'm really excited that I get to make this video with some really fun, cool people that I met this semester. I guess you can
left
say.
the meeting alert.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
One of them just left, so hopefully.
He didn't like being called fun and cool.
So mean.
So I guess we could wait. I can.
Yeah.
Oh, he's back.
He's joined the meeting
Oh, he's
alert.
back. Okay.
There he is.
Issues.
Well, it's fine. It's understandable. Zoom is a lot to deal with. So, so here we have Preston, we have Rachel, we have Kennedy, and we have Hyro. And we're just going to be talking to you guys about misrepresentation of those with visual impairments in media, and I'll let them kind of introduce themselves. So whoever wants to start first, have fun.
Okay, I can go.
Okay.
As Gabby mentioned, my name is Kennedy, and I recently graduated with my master's degree in cognitive neuroscience. I'm from Minnesota originally, and really excited to be here.
All right, I'll go next. My name is Rachel, and I am a music teacher. I have my bachelor's in music and my master's also in music and voice and music theory.
Yay, Rachel.
All right, I will go. Hi guys, my name is Preston. I work for Rutgers University in their technology department and in their School of Communication. I teach a class that talks a lot about disability and culture and etiquette and all that jazz, and I'm really glad to be here, and I want to thank Gabby for inviting all of us.
Yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Hyro. I'm a current student, almost done with my associate's degree in music technology, and I just want to thank Gavin for inviting me as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to work with you guys, and I know it's going to be a fun video because I know a lot of you have a lot to talk about for this topic. So for me, I guess we'll just jump into this. But for me, I feel like there are so many shows and movies that we find, and one of my biggest issues that I have with these things is that a lot of the time it's like people that are acting as a person with a disability, whether it's, well, for this case, someone who is blind, it's like, I feel like a lot of the time they don't really understand what that means. They don't understand that, the lifestyle. They don't understand how much more goes into it. It's not just, having really heightened senses where you could hear things happening like 3 blocks away. It's so, yeah, I feel like that's definitely a big one for me. Yeah. Anyone else?
I feel like in the media right now, blind people are either portrayed as being helpless or they're being portrayed as having special powers.
Yep.
And there's no middle ground, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to see, and then I think, like you said, Gabby, they are being, a lot of them are being played by sighted actors, and that also is a problem because, at the very least, they should be consulting blind people on how blind people actually are, rather than just assuming. But really, they should be casting blind performers,
blind people,
to play. But I think what they need to understand and start portraying us as, we are not all blind people have. I mean, well, that's just because you're blind doesn't mean you automatically have heightened senses, right?
Right.
We're a huge cross section. We're a cross section of society, and it'd be great to see blind people being portrayed as just regular people.
What you said. It also goes back. I'm a musician, and I produce a lot of stuff. And I guess it can also be said in the music production world, where You know, I would love to see, you know, other blind people do this. But yeah, we have that. We have that also saying that we have heightened senses in the music. So yeah, I just wish there was more blind people producing music or playing music or general writing music as myself.
Okay, this is Preston. I guess to kind of build off of, maybe expand on what Rachel was saying, something that kind of popped in my mind. It's a really tough situation because, unfortunately, you know, movie directors, TV producers, you know, content creators in this space, you know, they think that it is beneficial to portray blind people in such a way, either for tokenism or to, you know, to fulfill certain stereotypes. And unfortunately, I don't know of a way that could, you know, make them portray us correctly. I don't know if there's like a financial side to it. Like I just think unfortunately, it's just in their mind, it's the easy way out. It's the financial way out to almost use them as like a prop. So like an example that I like to talk about is, so like Seinfeld is by far my favorite show, right? And there's this one episode where Elaine, the only lead female in the show, was talking about how she had acne, and she thought, oh, I guess a blind man. There's a blind man who's feeling my face a few weeks ago, and that, of course, since it was the '90s, it had that piped-in laughter that was supposed to be like, oh, haha, you know, that's the joke. And that's just a really great example of what I guess I'm trying to get at, because, like, you know, most people, I think, a lot of people at least don't think that that's actually true, but they're not actually taking the time to dispel that stereotype or that notion, but they're looking at, oh, this will make people laugh, so let's just exploit this. So we have to, it's a tough thing to try and circumnavigate.
Definitely.
Yeah, and to kind of go off of that, and you know, like you said, there's a lot of stereotypes that get portrayed and perpetuated, and I think kind of a big problem with that is, unfortunately, sometimes that's people's only representation of a blind person is in the media. And while some people may not think something like touching someone's face is a thing that actually happens,
yeah,
I definitely have encountered people that do, because they see it in the movies, and people are like, that's their only representation that they get is from the movies. And so they'll be like, oh, do you want to touch my face? Or I've even heard of people being asked, like, do you see in the rain like Daredevil, which seems very far-fetched, but people get asked that. And so I think that's sort of like the big problem with the way these stereotypes are perpetuated, is that sometimes that's people's representation of a blind person. And then when they meet a blind person IRL, so to speak, in real life, that's just how they think of them, is from those movies. And then it can get really frustrating and just very awkward for everyone involved.
I definitely agree with that. I feel like I've encountered so many people that after watching Daredevil, now listen, I love Marvel. It was like when they had all those series, I used to watch them. And at first I was like, oh, Daredevil seems really cool. And then the more that I really understood what was happening, I was like, oh, no, like, that's not cool. Like, and I would encounter people that would be like, hey, are you, can you do this like Daredevil? I'm like, listen, you will never find a blind person, at least like that does this on a daily, that will literally jump from roof to roof and like land perfectly. And, it's just not, it's not realistic. And I feel like that was my biggest issue. The more that I kind of watched the show, and as it progressed, I was just like, okay, I don't ever do this. And so people in school would be like, oh, you're like Daredevil, like your hearing is perfect. I'm like, my hearing isn't perfect. You have to understand, like, and not to you guys, but like other people that do this. People like that need to understand. It's like when you do lose one sense, it's not that it's heightened. It's you have to rely on that more. So it's not a matter of like, oh, it's perfect and you can do this and you can do that. It's like, no, it's because unlike a lot of sighted people who really are just using their vision as kind of, what they rely on, excuse me, that you have to kind of play into all the other senses that you have too. And so Daredevil was definitely a big thing for me that I really was like, okay, like think about this realistically, because I had a lot of friends who were definitely into Marvel who are also visually impaired, and a lot of them would be like, oh, like this is not what somebody does on a day-to-day basis. A blind person does not do this. And so I feel like that really kind of set me off, and I was like, I don't like this stereotype. Why do they think that I can just walk around without my cane? Now, listen, there are some blind people that definitely do, and, depending on how much vision they have and things like that. But I don't know. I was very, like, annoyed and kind of, like, just bothered by it. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the one thing that it just like always perplexes me is like, that I mean, people have directors and content creators have the capacity to depict blind people in a more, accurate manner, but like it comes down to the whole like cost analysis and like, unfortunately, like, will the general public find that interesting, which like I know can come across as potentially really offensive, but unfortunately I think that's how they think. They create storylines, and it would be wonderful if we could somehow figure out a way to both interweave, cohesive and great stories into, accurate depictions, while also not making it seem like we're trying to like prop up the blind community, because there's some people who may feel like we're trying to be used just to, make money for this producer. So there's a lot of moving parts, obviously.
Yeah.
Preston, you bring up a really good point. You brought this up earlier too, like how can we change this? And
yeah,
I mean, I don't know if I think you're right. I don't know if there's a great answer for it, but I feel like in my mind, well, the best way we can change it, I mean, I know the NFB is already doing a lot of work to change it in the performing arts division with the Let Us Play Us campaign. But I think another thing that we can all do, especially artists, is to get our stories out there and to start writing, because writing those true stories about blindness. I know one of our Learning Ally folks, Kristen, has already written a couple books, and they're not overly well known at this point, but they're fantastic. Or I've only read one of them, and it's awesome. I think one was a short story, which I haven't read, but the other one that I have read depicts two blind characters, and it's very real life stories. But I think if we start, trying to depict our stories somehow, and maybe getting those out there and showing, the more interest we can get in those regular day-to-day experiences of blind people, where blindness is more of an incidental thing rather than like the center of the story. If that makes sense. I think that could help.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think normalizing or like making things such as like using a cane or using a guide dog part of the narrative is also really important. I think the book Things Not Seen, it's actually a whole series, but there's one of the protagonists is blind, and I think is portrayed surprisingly well, given a sighted person wrote that book, and is portrayed as like having to struggle a little bit with her blindness because she went blind later in life, but also like having to learn how to use a cane and becoming sort of strong and confident in herself and in her independence. And I wish that there was more like that in the media.
I think it's starting to get better.
I think
slowly. Very
slowly. Very, very slowly.
Yes.
What Jairo was talking about earlier kind of has me thinking. He was talking, Jairo, you were talking about how there were more blind people involved in like
in the music world. There's a really low rate of musicians who are visually impaired or blind. There's not a huge rate of music producers that are blind. Pretty much everyone's sighted. So I always get that, that stereotype that, you have the best hearing and your ears are so great. But I mean, it goes back to, it's not that I have great ears. It's just that I use my ears more than any other sight when somebody goes blind. But you know, like for me personally, what I've been trying to do in my campus and around my community and my campus, and with all the other people that I have classes with, I try to educate them, and I try to like build some kind of education, so they, or awareness, to say more the least. And I try to build that awareness and let them know that that, I mean, it might look difficult to them, but I mean, to a like a visual impaired person or blind person, they can also do the same capacities as a sighted person. So I try to bring out that awareness and education.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But I guess what that kind of reminded me is, like, yeah, I know, sure, there's, I don't know very many blind actors. I'm sure there are a lot. I'm sure there are some out there. I just don't know of any. But like, I know that there are lots of blind, you know, creative writers. So I mean, so these people could be hired on to, you know, work on scripts for TV shows and movies. So it's, so they can, I mean, they certainly do that for other minority groups who are, you know, they're being depicted on screen. They'll bring in, you know, a writer or a content creator of that minority group to more efficiently speak to that depiction. So I think that could certainly be something to be explored. Now, obviously, I mean, you know, there could be the demand, but where there's not a supply. So it's like a two-way relationship in terms of if they want, and if there is a pool of interested blind writers or creators.
That's so interesting, and I want to kind of go back to what Hyro was saying also, because it's so important to, and you know, it's big for me especially. That's kind of why, like, having this channel is so important to me, is because, like, I get to educate sighted people who don't know about these types of things, you know, who kind of have their own assumptions. Yeah, I'm sure we've all had our own experiences with sighted people who have kind of made those, you know, had those kind of misconceptions of what a blind person does, and, you know, all those types of things. And I feel like it's so important to educate people. And Preston, to what you were saying, it kind of brought me to another show that I watched just to see how it would play out. In the Dark. It was on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yes. I had like, it was not to the extent of like Daredevil, but I had so many more issues with that show because it just showed someone who
I avoided it, honestly.
I won't watch it.
And any of you, I don't know who has a guide dog here, but I'm sure some of you can kind of talk about this. Like, she like, I felt like she was abusing that dog. They had a recurring blind character come on the show, and I felt like, if there was already a blind character on the show, why not place her as the person that's, you know, actually going to be the main character, you know? It was so many things that I felt that she did wrong. And this is going to sound bad, but part of me kind of feels like these sighted actors that kind of take up these roles do it just to say, oh yeah, I played as a blind person, and I feel like I did a great job. But it's like,
I could see that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, no.
Just, I guess, adding another, I guess, achievement to their resume, I guess, that they.
How many people have played a blind person, if in the grand scheme of other actors, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Preston, I know you mentioned, I mean, there are a lot of blind actors who are out there trying to make it, and they're not being cast because they are not, you know, they're not being cast as, you know, it's hard for them to be cast because nobody wants to cast them. Or I shouldn't say nobody, but, you know, because they're for whatever reason, you know, they're sort of overlooked a lot.
Fit what they want.
Exactly. And that's something that, you know, that again, we're really, really working to change. And there's this great academy, I believe it's in New York, called Access Acting Academy, and it's for blind actors, run by a blind actor, which is really cool. And I think in the dark, that's a huge, huge thing that I have an issue with, because it's one of those situations where you have a sighted person playing the blind actor, and then you have, you know, they obviously didn't really consult a lot of legitimate sources because it's clear based
face
on
touching right in the first episode.
Yeah, like
Oh,
it's horrible. It's yeah.
Glad I didn't
Yeah,
watch.
there's a few there's like a few okay things about that show, because I think there were a couple of things they kind of got right, and as
Yeah.
Gabby said, it's not as bad as Daredevil, but that's not a high bar to have to clear.
Yeah.
It's overall pretty awful, and a sighted person playing the protagonist who is blind
Right.
Yeah.
is
It does
problematic
not make
for
any
sure.
sense at all.
Yeah.
Rachel, I just called Rachel out because I know she has a guide dog, but if anybody else has one, like, feel free. But, like, how did you feel kind of, I don't know if you watched, like, the full, or if you watched, like, a few episodes, but knowing that, like, she wasn't treating her guide dog the way a blind person would treat a guide dog. Like, I'm sure that might have been like, okay, whoa, like,
So I didn't see it. Like I actually honestly, and I don't know, Preston, I don't know if you said, because I know you have a guide dog as well,
Yeah.
but I know that, I mean, just based on what I've heard and what you've said, I mean, I didn't see that part of it. I've seen like parts of it and I'm just like, nope, I don't want to see this. But I mean, that's a huge problem because if you're portraying a guide dog and handler relationship in a way that's not accurate, because that's done a lot. I mean, people already have misconceptions about guide dogs, and so I mean that causes a big problem for us as guide dog users, and for the way people view how the guide dog, the role of the guide dog in our lives. People either think that they're that it's unfair for them to be treated the way people think it's either unfair for them to be treated as guide dogs, or they think that they should be overindulged, and it's like it's not, it's a problem. So
I didn't. So full disclosure, I did not watch the show, mainly because it did not seem very interesting to be perfectly honest. But I do remember hearing something from kind of someone heavily involved in the guide dog community that I don't recall which school, and I guess if I did, I wouldn't share it anyway. But I don't recall which school, but the kind of administration of the show actually asked if they could like borrow one of their like dogs in training to be the guide dog on the show.
Oh my god.
And
that's insane.
I know, that just shows so much ignorance.
That's so inappropriate.
Because I think they're thinking, I was like, well, I mean, they have the show Pick of the Litter, so like
no.
Oh my gosh.
So just
totally different.
Just to show the highlight the disconnect, I guess.
Oh my gosh. So what did the school? Obviously, the school didn't let them do
they said
that.
no. Yeah, they said no.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
horrible.
So inappropriate. And that's the thing, like, just the main character just really did not seem, because I wanted to really kind of, everybody was like, oh, check out this show with this person, and I was like, oh, okay, sure. And so I don't know, there was just so many things that she did that, once again, it was just like, my biggest thing, and this, you guys can obviously like talk about whatever, but like I feel like something that's so important when you are trying to, even if you can't get a blind actor or actress to play that part, if you say, okay, we're gonna have this sighted person play the role of a blind character, do your research. Like, there's so many people that just don't do their research, and like it just bothers me. And face touching, I had somebody ask me to touch their face once, that I was just like,
yep.
No.
Okay. No. No thanks.
Like, all right, I guess it's just the fact that those mores and whatnot haven't like ascended to the top of the cultural heap, because like you would never ask something blatantly offensive to someone else, that someone as a minority, like, so it's just, and I feel like people view them the same. It's just not part of like the, I guess, evoked set of what
sensitivity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or they just don't know.
Hopefully they'll get there someday.
Yeah, or they don't know.
They're not. They're.
Yeah.
It's not trying to be offensive, and I think that is something we need to remember too. Is whenever
Absolutely.
we have someone ask us a question that's just ignorant or whatever, it's very rarely. I mean, I'm not saying never because I'm sure there are definitely times when it is, but very rarely are they not trying to doing what they believe is polite and okay.
Yeah. Important to keep in mind people's intentions aren't bad,
Exactly.
but also it can still be a little bit frustrating too, for sure.
It can, especially if you're having a bad day.
Yeah, that's true. We're still humans.
Yeah, for sure. And like not even just with like media and entertainment, but just in general, like I've had a lot of people that would ask me questions, and I know usually, like you said, Rachel, they don't really mean to come across as being inappropriate or trying to come out saying something really mean, but it's like I think to a lot of blind people in the community, it's just like, oh, this person is just making these assumptions, and it goes back to kind of what we talked about earlier. They see these things on TV and in their movies, and they kind of just say, oh, every blind person is like that. Every blind person does this, and it's something that like I find to be really important to state is like that person that you are interacting with, that that blind individual, there's so much more to them besides them just being blind. Like understand who they are before you just say, hey, I have a question about X, Y, and Z. And again, I don't ever mind like having people ask me questions because I love talking about, again, it's like educating and making sure people understand, but those assumptions can sometimes come across as that person being rude and that person not, kind of understanding the lifestyle and what we kind of deal with anyway. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So kind of in a positive light, because I'm actually struggling to think of one, unfortunately, but can you guys think of any, because I think Kennedy mentioned someone a few minutes ago, can you think of any characters that you think were really accurately portrayed, a character who's blind or visually impaired in like a TV show or a book? And maybe we could kind of talk about that a little bit, because I'm honestly struggling a little bit. That might be because I don't really seek out that type of media, but still.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
Yeah, no, like I was saying before, there's a series. There's actually 3 books in the series. But the first one's called Things Not Seen, and they all, well, 2 out of the 3 feature the blind character, and I thought she was portrayed quite well, particularly for the time, because this book takes place in like a time when there were like cassette tapes and things like that. And she was very strong. The plot of the first book is that the main character who is sighted turns invisible, and she is one of the people that is able to help him. But she's very strong. She goes blind later in life. She has to struggle a little bit because of that and dealing with this whole like, I had my sight and now I don't. And I don't have that experience, so I don't know if that particular part of it was portrayed well, but her like struggle to gain independence and her sort of trying to navigate and figure things out, and her pride when she was able to like do certain things that she didn't think she was able to do, I thought was portrayed quite well. But beyond that particular series of books, I really also can't think of much of anything.
It's hard to come up with one, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, and I don't know, because I have mixed feelings about this one, but Toph from Avatar.
Oh, I was hoping we'd get to that.
I have mixed feelings about her too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there were parts where I was like, okay, like I could kind of understand why they would portray her this way. But again, it's like Daredevil. It's like, okay, the earthbending thing. Yeah, it's for the show, obviously. And like, I mean, people that are going to be watching this, like, know that it's mainly because of the show that these things happen. But, other than that, there were parts like the blind jokes. I felt like, okay, a lot of blind people do make a lot of blind jokes. I mean, I make a lot of blind jokes, but it's like other than that, there were certain things that I kind of was like, okay, I could definitely understand this, and other things that I was just like, no, like no, just don't.
Yeah.
She's not the worst one.
No,
She's
she's
not.
not.
I think by any means, but yeah, I think, you know, like her attitude, that whole like I don't really it's been a while since I've seen the show, but you know, she has this kind of she
I'm
definitely
watching
has
it right
an
now.
attitude. And are you? I have to. Yeah, I need
I
to watch
love
it
that
again.
show though. I'm
I
not
love
gonna-
that show,
I
but
love that show too.
but I can understand why. You know, I think the whole idea that she's been totally like kind of overlooked her whole life, and she
Hmm.
has no. You know, I think that
Yeah,
you can't blame her for having that sort of, you know, I don't
Sassy.
need anyone. I'm
Yeah.
sassy. I don't, you know, I don't need anyone kind of attitude. And I think
Relatable.
that
Yeah.
that's totally relatable. So I actually appreciated that
so, yeah.
Oh,
that part of her.
I actually
Yeah.
sort of.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead, Kenny. But I actually sort of thought of one, but you go first.
Yeah, no, I think Toph is an interesting case. I was actually thinking about this a lot, kind of as soon as you brought this up, Gabby, of
I
possibly
know,
doing
me
this
too.
collaboration. She was the first person I thought of because I'm watching Avatar right now. And I think she is problematic in that, like, her powers that allow her to quote unquote see, in other words, to sense where things are a little bit inconsistent to me. Like, it feels like there's sometimes in the show where they're like in the air or something and she shouldn't be able to do that, but she still is because it's convenient for the plot. Like, it's very inconsistent, and I find that problematic. And I do find sort of some of the other things like that problematic, but I do think that her struggle and the way her parents treated her, unfortunately, maybe not to the same extent, but that does happen. The way she was sort of hidden and sheltered and very much overlooked.
Yeah.
And that sort of like
Yeah.
forcing herself to be independent and kind of sassy that way,
Like your book,
I think is also.
like what you were talking about in your book. Like it's, you know, how she kind of had to find a way to, and I think for Toph, like she did mention throughout so many parts of the show that, like, you know, her parents kind of, she felt like her parents didn't really care about her enough, or like, you know, they didn't give her the attention or give her even that freedom to find her own independence and really be able to go
Yeah,
outside of what they expected her to do. And I
yeah,
really felt that part, but you know.
yeah, even though they were just really trying to, what they thought was help her and protect her,
Right.
and they had their intentions again were good. I think that part of Blindness was actually done quite well. I think the blind jokes are a little forced.
Yeah.
I think they're good, but I think they're a little forced. I'm like, okay, we're
Yeah.
overdoing it now. Show creators, come on.
So, have you guys ever seen the show Arrested Development?
I heard
I've
about
heard of
Yeah,
it.
I've seen parts of it. Is there a blind character in it?
Well, sort of. So it's probably my second favorite show of all time, actually. And there's a two-part episode where Jason Bateman's character, Michael, the main character, has we'll call it a fling with Jennifer Louise Dreyfus's character, who is pretending to be blind. And
Whoa.
I was really nervous watching this because I thought they could do a really damaging number on depicting blind people. But the thing that I think is really interesting is she totally does all the cliche things that you see in movies, like the asking to touch your face, like not working with a service animal correctly, like the inherent awkwardness about like, oh, see you later, hear you later, like all that crap. But
All that crap.
Gosh.
I just think it was so funny because a lot of it was really highlighting the gullibility and just it felt honestly like a middle finger to normal producers and stuff. And I feel like that's maybe what they're going for because it is very much so a comedy. And like in this situation, Michael is obviously fooled into thinking she's blind, and she's very obviously not blind. Like even as someone who is not, like, they saw sort of as obviously not blind, but Michael falls for it. And I feel like that's kind of like a representation of, kind of like the greater media. It's very well done.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's good.
That is interesting.
It has AD.
Does it have
It's really good. Yeah.
I felt like
It's
it didn't have
hilarious.
Yeah. I think it does, Gabby, on Netflix, maybe?
It
Yeah.
does, yeah.
Because my sister watches it.
Oh yeah,
it's
Arrested
such a good
Development's
show.
on Netflix.
Yeah.
I love that show so much. The first 3 seasons are awesome, but then Netflix like rebooted it like 10 years later, because the first 3 seasons I think were on like Fox in like the early 2000s. And then I think in like
really?
2013, Netflix got the rights, and the 2 seasons they did were not very good, but the first 3 were amazing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is Hyrule still here? I don't know if he.
Yeah, what happened to Hyrule?
Oh, where is Hyro?
I'm still here.
Oh.
Can you-
Oh, okay. Because
You've been so quiet.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of anyone who you felt was done well in, or any blind person done well in the media?
like Preston said, I don't tap into that media, so I don't. That's why I was quiet all that whole time, because I don't know of any one, or any show. I don't really tap into that kind of media, to be honest with you guys. So I don't have any answer to that. I don't
That's
really,
fair.
so.
Yeah, I can think of more who were portrayed badly. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah.
the
Those
commander
that's
on Star Trek, who wasn't actually blind, even though they said he was, because he had that visor. Like, there are
So
lots of them.
I have a question for you guys, because I really want to, kind of have like a discussion about like what are some ways you all think directors, aside from just placing blind people in the show and having them play as the main characters and things like that, but what are some other ways you think they could really portray us in a better light, no pun intended. Yeah, like things like that. Like, what do you think some of them could do? And do you think that there are people in the blind community who are okay with these types of misconceptions and misrepresentations? Because it's interesting to kind of think about.
One thing that I guess directors can do is, just get their resources when they go to portray a blind character, I guess, or a person who's decided to play the role of a blind character. Because like you guys said in the series, where they don't do it well with the guide dog. So I guess just pulling their resources and getting the correct resources, and involving, I guess, in some sorts of ways, the blind community, like getting resources, or I don't know, advice, I guess, some way like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, kind of what Rachel was saying. Actually, tap into the wealth of blind talent out there.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing I thought of is, don't take the easy way out and just use blind characters to like be an inspiration, or to be like, oh wow, look at that. Like, try to, have them be blind, but obviously just make them accomplish normal things, or like, I don't know, almost like normalize them in some sense. So it's not like trying to make them feel like the other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to answer your other question, I think there are I think there are a number of people in the community who, I don't know that they are fine with it, but they're just like, it's not worth putting up a fuss about, or they don't really care, so it's not affecting them directly. So, but,
Yeah. I've actually thought about this a lot, because I talk about this a lot, believe it or not. And so I've been asked, like, well, what should people be doing? And I definitely agree with what Preston said, having blind people do normal things and be successful at them. But another thing, like, if you're going to give a blind person special powers, which I think is maybe still problematic, but if you're going to do it, then maybe have their power have nothing to do with blindness, and they have to figure out how to navigate that power as a blind person. So, like,
I agree.
this is maybe a bad example, but like, maybe they have the ability to fly, but now they have to figure out how to navigate in the air with their guide dog or their cane or something, like
Right, yeah.
and still have to struggle with being blind and still have to maybe not struggle, but like still have that be a part of it, but not have their special power counteract their blindness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, there actually was a character like that, and I didn't want to bring him up because I really didn't feel like he was a great representation of blindness. But have you guys ever read the Maximum Ride series by James Patterson?
No.
I've heard of it.
I've definitely heard of it, but
it's not. I'm not gonna lie. I don't like it that much. No offense to anyone who's listening who likes James Patterson, but but I felt like there were a lot of things I didn't like about it, just plot wise. But there's a blind character, and so basically he's part bird. It's like a bunch of children who are like part bird, and so his power. I'm trying to remember. Does he have? I don't think that he has any power specific to his blindness, but of course he has the sharpened senses and the heightened senses. But he also does have to figure out, how to use his power, and use it, navigating it around his blindness. So that part is kind of interesting. But yeah, other than that, I didn't really find him a very good example.
Yeah. The other thing I would say, I think this is fairly common. I've seen it more in literature than in media and just with disability in general, but like don't make somebody's quote unquote happy ending be that they get their sight back.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I really had fun chatting with you guys today. So if you guys want to add anything, I want to just thank you guys for coming on again. And if anybody wants to ever come back on my channel and talk about anything, like,
cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gabby. That was wonderful.
Gabby, are you gonna ask everyone to like, share, and subscribe?
Oh yeah, you gotta do that.
Yes, we should.
Then it's not a YouTube video.
I already subscribed, but you should ask everybody else, all your listeners, like,
Ring
share, and
the
subscribe.
bell.
Please like, share, subscribe, and comment, and all that fun stuff that usually happens.
We want Gabby to be monetized.
Ring that bell so you get.
Yes, please. The bell.
Yeah. Ring that bell so you get notifications every time she puts out a video.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.
All right.
See you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Want to stop
Bye,
collaborating?
guys.
Yes.
Bye.
Hierophania has left the.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
You too, Gabby.
Talk to you tomorrow, Gabby.
All right, for
Yeah.
sure.
Talk to you tomorrow, probably.
Yes, buddy.